Low-key, I'd probably still go and check it out, but I'd be like, I'm sorry, I love you, like, don't hurt me.
Bring like crystals and like everything, like please.
Sacrifice my sister, like.
Tell her that. Welcome to yours truly. My name is Tina.
And I'm Muhammad.
This is our podcast from us to you. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. This is our third episode, and we love having you here.
Yep, this is a show where nothing is off limits, where we try to have some fun, learn something new at the same time. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, and join us in our shenanigans.
How are you guys doing? It's been a while.
Yep. We've been missing for some time, but we're back.
Yeah, we were celebrating Ramadan, or Eid, should I say?
Yeah.
Eid. Yeah, so we want to take some time with the family and do some fun stuff, but we love having you guys back. And if you haven't noticed, we got some t-shirts. Some t-shirts, specialty of his sister.
Thank you too, Will.
If you guys would like some, let us know. We'll start selling stuff. Alright, so today's episode, I actually have no clue what's going on. We decided to take a spin on our podcast since we're still trying to figure out like what we want, the layout, and our style. So today, Muhammad here will be taking charge of today's podcast, and I will be with you guys. I will be reacting and listening, so it'll be fun.
Today's episode's a little bit different. We got, a little bit of a mythology, murder, mystery type of deal going on, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you do, let us know so we'll make some more of these. I had a lot of fun doing the research and creating it, so hopefully we can do some more of them.
Mine will be a little bit better. I'm just saying.
Get out of here.
Also, if you guys like this layout that we have, let us know. We're going to be testing out a lot of different layouts, a lot of different editing styles. So let us know what you guys like. We love having your input, so please do let us know, okay?
Definitely. Alright, so today's episode is about the Pharaoh's curse.
Dun dun dun!
Dun, dun, dun.
Ooh.
Right. Alright, so first let's set the scene, okay? So ancient Egypt is one of the most...
One of the most what?
It's one of the first ever civilizations and possibly the most intriguing when it comes to cultural impact, historical impact, and just being extremely unique, right? And so this can go on and on about how advanced they were for the time and just how incredible of a civilization they were. Okay, but I want to focus on the kings, the pharaohs.
Okay.
Right, these pharaohs were seen as like gods on land. Okay, so the people treated them as gods. And not only were they extremely educated and talented and given all the rights of the land, but they were warriors. Badass, right?
Rawr.
And so when these pharaohs passed away, since the people saw them as gods, they had to be buried with the most respect and most pomp that a being on their level deserved. Okay, and so they were made especially handcrafted masks, and they resembled like godlike filters of their face, and they're made out of gold, and they wrapped up and mummified so that their bodies could be preserved for the afterlife, right? Because the Egyptians believed in the afterlife, and you needed all of your stuff for the afterlife as a god, right? And then they were put in layers and layers of coffins and sarcophaguses that were all specially handcraft made out of like gold and special minerals and materials. And right, there's layers on layers of that stuff. And then they'd be placed in this room, and these walls would be engraved, painted, and written in hieroglyphs their life story, their legacy, and again in like a godlike filter. And then they'd be sealed away forever in a labyrinth filled with mazes that had like booby traps and dead ends and like fake walls and stuff to make sure that these kings and queens would rest forever. That was really important, and keep that in mind. They really wanted these kings and queens to rest forever. Okay,
so for those who don't know, what is a labyrinth?
A labyrinth is like some usually underground tunnel, and it's just some super complicated like mixture of tunnels and walls and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Cool? All right. So that takes us to the late 1800s, where eventually more and more of these tombs were eventually discovered. Okay. So the entire world was fascinated because these mummies were perfectly preserved. Their bodies were still in perfect condition. And so archaeologists all over the world would come flocking to Egypt to try to find the next big discovery. They wanted to have the next big thing to their name.
Okay.
And so eventually that takes us to the year 1921, where Lord Carnarvon, he's just some rich British dude, he funds a famous Egyptologist named Howard Carter to excavate the land and find the next big thing. Okay, so a long time passes, maybe about a year or so, and Carter's not finding anything. He's having no luck whatsoever. And so he writes back to Lord Carnarvon. He's like, can I get some more money? And Lord Carnarvon is like, bruh, all right, fine, one more year. So he gets one more year to find something. And this is a big deal to Carter because if he doesn't find anything, he's out of a job, he's out of a career, and his reputation. So if he doesn't find anything, homeboy is done. He's done, right?
He's going to be living in a box.
He's living in a box.
In the middle of a city.
All right, so one day in 1922, almost a year later, he's run out of money and out of time. In the Valley of the Kings where they were digging, where they found some other of the tombs, an Egyptian young water boy, is running across the valley to bring water to the archaeologists and the excavators until he trips on a stone. All right.
A stone.
Trips on a stone. This boy's confused. He looks back. He's like, where'd that stone come from? But he saw the stone moved. So he gets back up, pushes the stone out of the way, and he sees that there's a tunnel underneath. So he cries out for Carter. Carter brings all of his men over. They start digging the tunnel out, and homeboy is hype, right? He's like, I did it. I found something. So he writes back to Lord Carnarvon. He's like, I found something. Run me some bread so I can get it out. He's like, get it out. And Lord Carnarvon is like, hold up. Actually, I'm on my way. And so, for whatever reason, Carnarvon really wanted to be there to find this tomb, which, spoiler alert, was a really bad idea. Stay tuned. And so Carnarvon finally gets there. So he and Carter head down the stairs, lighter in one hand, a little digging tool that archaeologists use in the other hand. They head down the tunnel, and they reach this wall that was the seal of King Tut's tomb. So Carter pokes a little hole in the top left corner of the wall. He peeks through, can't see nothing. It's dark, there's dust everywhere. But eventually the dust starts settling, and the flicker of his lighter starts having like a glimmer in the room. And eventually dust settles, and he sees all kinds of treasures and shiny artifacts and all kinds of crazy stuff. Lord Carnarvon's this little tiny dude, like a little kid. He's like, do you see anything? Do you see anything? And that's where the famous saying from Carter says, yes, wonderful things. And if you read anything about archaeology, you care anything about that, it's a very famous saying. All right, so they found King Tut's tomb, right? So let's go over why it's so important and why this curse makes even the most logical people second guess their thoughts, because I caught myself doing as I'm researching this, like trying to find logical reasons for all these crazy incidents I'm about to tell you about. And yet here I am making a full podcast out of it. So just keep an open mind, all right? All right, so King Tut's life was filled with a lot of intrigue, drama, and just crazy-ish, right?
Okay.
First off, the dude took the throne at 9 years old. All right, his father passed away, and this was during a time when Egypt was just crumbling because his dad, the previous king, had turned his back on all of Egyptian traditional religion and just way of life, and they were fighting a war. And so, thanks, Dad, right? So being a 9-year-old, all this on his shoulders, he obviously needs some help, and hence comes his advisor, whose name is I was advisor for King Tut, his father, and his grandfather.
Okay. So he's been in the family for like a while.
Exactly. So I is the one who's really pulling the strings and everything. He's the one who's really controlling what's going on because the kid is 9 years old. Eventually they stabilize Egypt by going back to traditional ways of life.
What do you mean by like traditional ways of life?
So King Tut's dad, instead of believing in all these gods and deities that the Egyptians believed in, he turned himself into a god, basically. So all these statues would resemble his face, and they all had to worship him. Isn't
that like a taboo thing, like back then?
Exactly, yeah. Right. So a lot of people were pissed off, but he's the king. You gotta do what he says. He is a god. So I turns that back around. People start living back living normally again.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, they start stabilizing again, but they're still at war, right? And so, remember what I said about pharaohs being warriors?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, King Tut was out there mollywopping dudes at 18, at 18 years old. 18 years old.
But when you say mollywopping, all I could think was
Until the runaway chariot runs his ass over.
Okay.
And he dies. Okay, he dies in battle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being a pharaoh, he needs to immediately get prepared for burial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but his burial was really suspicious.
How so?
So, all right. So you see, a pharaoh typically gets about 70 days to have their body prepared, embalmed, or mummified,
Mm-hmm.
have their caskets made, their mask, their sarcophagus, have all the materials brought into the room,
Yeah.
the room painted, all that I was mentioning before, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Tut, on the other hand, was given, first off, a very small room, which was strange. Just all the stuff was like stuffed into a very small room, just strange for a king, and his entire thing was rushed. Okay, and you can tell this because, well, first off, with that being said, he was rushed to get buried, and then his successor erased his history in the books. I was going to ask, who do you think it is? But yes, I was the advisor who ended up taking the throne after King Tut.
I was going to say, when you said that, like, I was, like, his assistant that helped him since he was 9, and he's been in the family for some time, I was like, there has to be some, like, evil motive behind him. I feel like when you have been in, like, a royal family for so long, and you, like are under someone for so long, I feel like eventually you have that aching feeling of, like, I want power after, you know?
Absolutely. And he was a very ambitious and greedy person, and he never got the chance until now because King Tut didn't have any children. And so not only was he stuffed in a small room with those things, his toes were cut off to fit the casket, which tells us that the casket was not made for him. He was missing organs and bones, which is very abnormal for a king because they kind of need those things for the afterlife, right? Remember what I said, they need to preserve their bodies so that it's ready for the afterlife. And so, not only that, but then his mask was put on a woman's head garment. So the mask of his face was replaced from what would have been his onto a woman's. And get this, with the way they embalm the body with linseed oil, right? There's a reason why it usually takes 70 days for a pharaoh to be fully buried. And that is because with the moisture that comes from linseed oil on his body not drying, the moisture from the paint in the room not drying, being closed off in a stuffy room, the moisture continues to develop. You add air to that, and you get a fire. Homeboy was on fire for who knows how long. When he's supposed to be resting as a king, as a god.
So he turned to bacon.
He turned to bacon, which is haram.
Oh my god. Okay, that's gonna be our beginning video.
So they completely botched his burial, which shows that there were people conspiring against him for who knows whatever reason. And that they didn't respect him as a god because it's not typical for anyone of importance to be buried with such little attention to detail, right? The Egyptians and their culture were super anal about this stuff. Like, everything had to be precise and perfect and handcrafted with the best materials and with the most pomp and everything, right? And so while all this is happening, the new king, takes his woman. All right. I think it's easy to say.
That a little nasty. I feel like the age difference there is a little weird. That's uncomfortable.
It's not like she had a choice. Anyways, so I think it's easy to say that the king did not get a peaceful rest, which was again really important to the Egyptians and the kings. And it's important to take note for the rest of the story. And so somehow Tut's tomb was covered even more by being buried under sediment due to flash floods in the area. Okay. So I need to mention this before. Most of the tombs were carved into a wall that was already there. Tut's tomb was buried underground. Okay, so maybe a spirit was pissed, causes a flood, brings sediments to it. I don't care if you believe in that. I'm just gonna roll with it.
Or maybe his spirit was pissed.
Maybe his spirit was pissed. cause floods were very common in the time in that area, and so sediment covers his burial, his grave, and it just looks like regular floor. All right, so obviously he didn't want to be found. Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. All right, so then back to the discovery of Tut's tomb in 1922. So everyone was excited at the discovery of the new tomb because not only was it a new tomb, but it was fully preserved, right? Because grave robbers never got a chance to take a shit. Like, they never got a chance to. His tomb was buried almost immediately after he was buried. And so the most important thing in this tomb that was filled with treasures and gold and historical artifacts, was something that was written on the walls. And that said, "Death shall come on swift wings to those who disturb the king's rest."
Okay.
People came flocking in anyways from all over the world. Archaeologists, scientists, tourists. Everyone wanted to see a fully preserved tomb and Pharaoh. But guess what? Those words on the wall would ring true. Get this. More than 22 of the people associated with the original discovery have faced strange illnesses, injuries, or even death. And when I say strange, I mean strange. And 9 have been directly linked to the curse of the pharaohs due to their relation to, take a guess?
The dude that discovered the...
Close. The rich dude, Lord Carnarvon.
Okay.
He would be one of the first people to face this curse. 5 months after the discovery, he cuts open a mosquito bite while shaving.
Oof.
While shaving. Nothing serious, right? He dies of blood poisoning.
How do you...
And it's reported that all of the lights in his apartment went out mysteriously when they found his body. Just his.
Interesting.
Bruce Ingram received a paperweight mummy hand. A mummy hand that would use as paperweight. A real mummy hand that had a bracelet on it that said, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Take a wild guess what happened to this dude.
His house got on fire?
His house burned down, and then he tried to build it back up, and then a flood took it out.
So the pharaohs were like, "Oh, you thought. You thought."
So it's nothing else reported about him, but he was smart and took this mummy hand and threw it in the river. He was like, "That's it. I'm not risking it no more." Smartest guy on this list so far. Prince Ali, nobody was safe. Murdered immediately after visiting the tomb. Governor of Sudan, also viciously murdered right after visiting the tomb. Nobody's safe. Anybody can catch these hands. George J. Gold was a wealthy railway executive who visited the tomb in 1923 and immediately fell sick and died of pneumonia. Aubrey Herbert, half-brother of Lord Carnarvon, fell completely blind and died of poisoning. You can see a lot of people, everyone on this list has some sort of relation to Lord Carnarvon. Let's keep that in mind. Hugh Evelyn White was a British archaeologist who helped excavate the site, and after seeing 24 of his excavators die, hung himself after writing a note saying, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear," in his own blood. Okay. Aaron Ember was also friends with Lord Carnarvon and many of the people present when the tomb first opened in 1926. When they first opened. And then in 1926, he died along with his wife, son, and housemaid when their home burned down. But get this, they had an easy opportunity to escape, but his wife convinced him to go back and find the manuscript, an Egyptian manuscript, or a book. Guess what that book was called? The Egyptian Book of the Dead. So they go back in to save this book, and they all die in the fire. Unfortunate. Richard Bethel, Lord Carnarvon's secretary, was smothered in his room.
Smothered?
Smothered in his room with a pillow.
Oh, like literal.
Yeah, they just killed him like that. And it's reported that he had many, many artifacts from the tomb in his apartment. King Tut was not happy about that. He said, "Give me my shit back." Sir Archibald Douglas Reed.
Say that name one more time.
Archibald was a radiologist who x-rayed the mummy. That's all he did. The museum gave it to him to x-ray the mummy to see what's going on. He died 3 days later of illness, and there was also the curse in the room that said, "Death by disease, no doctor can diagnose." He died to a disease no doctor could diagnose. Poor guy, he was just doing his job. James Henry Breasted, another famous Egyptologist, was working with Carter. He came home to see his pet canary was eaten by a cobra. If you know anything about ancient Egypt, a cobra is a symbol of the Egyptian monarchy.
Oh, snap.
And the cobra was still in the cage when he came back home. So he didn't die until 1935, but when he did die, it was immediately after a trip to Egypt. So maybe the pharaohs missed him the first time. They're like, "Gotcha."
He sent the cobra, but then like it wasn't the right time. He was like, "Oh, wait for it."
Yeah, right now I got something for you. Howard Carter, remember him, the lead Egyptologist that Lord Carnarvon was funding?
Yeah.
He never faced the consequences of the curse, but it was reported that he was the only one that believed in the curse and was just genuinely in love and in awe of the ancient kings and queens, right? He died at the age of 64, but his tombstone to this day says, "May your spirit live, may you spend millions of years, you who love Thebes, sitting with your face to the north wind, your eyes beholding happiness."
Wasn't Thebes like a city in Egypt?
Thebes was the capital of ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
So he obviously had a lot of respect for ancient Egypt and the kings and queens. So by 1929, a total of 22 people who had been involved in the discovery of the tomb had died prematurely within 7 years, and only 2 of the original excavators were still alive by that time. If you know anything about like ancient Egypt, like lots of excavators are out there.
This is a warning to you all.
You're probably thinking, "Muhammad, that was years and years ago. It doesn't matter. Like, we're fine. We look at these mummies all the time." I'll tell you about some modern examples.
Oh, there's modern.
There's modern examples.
Okay.
In 1995, an American Egyptologist died studying the pharaohs. Of course, because he's American. Now we're like, okay, we should go study these tombs. They go study the tombs. I'll tell you about that later in the end. Again, that was just 1995. And then even as soon as this year, in late March and early April, Egypt faced some of the worst consequences, like catastrophes, let's just say. Maybe it was consequence. Such as a train wreck in southern Egypt causing the death of at least 25. A building collapsed in Cairo, killing 18 and injuring 24. And of course, the famous Suez Canal ship, they got stuck in the Suez Canal. This all happened around the same time of the showcasing of the pharaohs, when the pharaohs were being moved from the old museum to the new museum, and Cairo had this special parade and festival all laid out for
the parade was really pretty though.
It was really cool. Actually, you guys should watch it. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really great.
But I don't think the pharaohs were too happy about that. They're like, "You guys finally let me rest, and now you're out here like showing me these little kids with their musty fingers touching my glass." Oh, okay.
I want to touch, mommy. I want to touch.
All right, and so there's lots of like explanations people have come up with, saying like there was special bacteria that formed in the tombs that killed these people, or it was just a coincidence. There's also another one about I forget his name, but he was a Satanist who looked up to the Egyptian kings and queens, and he was not happy about the uncovering of them and went out and killed these people.
Okay.
Who knows? But a lot of these are very, like, it's hard to say all of these are coincidence because they're very, like,
around the same time
eerie,
of when
around the same time.
Yeah.
They were all in Britain at the time, too. The one I was saying in the 1920s. They were all in England. All these people that went there were from England. And so, I don't know. It's pretty eerie to me. That's all I have for you guys right now. Anything else you gotta say, Tina?
I guess for me, like, do you have any, like, logical explanation that you can think of? Because you're such a logical dude. Like, I don't know. I feel like we should talk about it and see, like, what we think.
To me, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that these were buried away for thousands and thousands of years in these closed rooms that had a lot of moisture in it. You could develop all kinds of fungi and bacteria. things that humans should not be ingesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine back in the 1920s, I doubt they're wearing masks or like these protective garments. A lot of times they still don't today. Like you'll see archaeologists just go on the regular clothes. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for people that got sick. But I mean, especially like the house burning down and the water flooding it right after. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know how can you can explain that.
I think it's so funny because like you're not the kind of person that like believes in that stuff. More like I am. Like I'm definitely the kind of person that believes in like zodiac signs, believes in like spiritual deities and all that stuff. And like for me, I'm just like, most definitely, of course, like the pharaohs were pissed. Of course, they're like, you mess with me, I'll show you what you're dealing with, kind of thing, you know. So like, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it makes sense in like a scientific aspect of it. If you think of it like, yes, there's probably some chemicals, some like old chemicals or old like mold or whatever, fungi or whatever that's in there. That like once you smell it and once you like sniff it, it can like harm you. But that also, if you think about it in like a scientific way, it's like chemistry, right? There's some chemicals in chemistry that we use where like you cannot smell it because if you do, like it can cause you some harm, like from what I know, right?
Of course, yeah.
I remember in science class, like they were like, if you want to smell something, you just gotta waft it. Like, you don't want to, you want to waft it. You don't want to smell it because it can hurt you. So for me, like, logically, that's what I can think of, like, if that's how it happens. But the whole, like, house thing, that's so, like, there's no way that it can be, like, what's the word?
Just a coincidence?
Yeah, just a coincidence. Again,
and all of these were, like, directly, linked to the tomb. Like, it's not
like every single person, right? Every single person. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I totally believe it. Like, I totally believe that, like, a pharaoh got mad, and probably because, like, King Tut did so dirty.
Exactly.
And he was probably so mad because, I mean, like, okay, that's the one thing I don't understand. So, like, why did they take his organs? Like, if, like, I get that he couldn't fit into the coffin, so they had to cut his toes, right? But, like, why did they take the organs? Why did they take the heart? Like, that's something for me that I don't understand.
See, that's the thing. I mean, the logical answer for me is that they were just too damaged based off of, like, the fact that he was killed in battle.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Maybe they had to take him out because they couldn't preserve it. But, again, like, it's not typical. Like, they'd find a way to make it work. Like, they really cared about that. So... my whole point about this was that, you know, the whole point of telling you about King Tut's life was the fact that if you believe in those kind of things, it's easy to see that spirit was very upset. And then if you get put away for 3,000 years and you get disturbed, I mean, I'd mollywop your ass too. Like.
You come back to life, be like, who said you could wake me
Y'all didn't
up?
read the signs?
Like, I put warnings. Can you not read? No, yeah.
But then I guess the other argument is that, like, oh, so many people have seen the tomb and nothing happened to them. Okay, well, like, there's too many... like,
examples that has happened for it to not seem real. Yeah.
And there's more than just what I listed too. These are just the most, like, interesting that I found that I thought were pretty cool. Okay. There's a lot more that happened that can be linked to the curse of the pharaohs.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun. So I'm assuming that you believe in the whole pharaoh's curse then.
Man, I'm not risking it. That's what I'm gonna say.